Dorothy works at Chick-fil-A, and I know they're based here in Atlanta, but how many of you have Chick-fil-A's where you come from? Okay, so we're all fairly familiar with Chick-fil-A. Well, Dorothy works at Chick-fil-A, and one day a high school soccer team came and stopped at her store for lunch on their way to a tournament. And a young player named Catherine and all of her teammates were eating, and their coach came through and said, "Okay, girls, hurry up, we need to go. I need you to get on the bus now so we can leave." So Catherine had to very quickly gather up all her things and throw out her trash. She raced her friends to the bus, and it wasn't until they were a little ways down the highway that Catherine realized what she'd done. She couldn't believe she had done it again. She did not want to call her mom and tell her what had happened. Does anyone have a guess for me? Retainer. See, I see you've all been there. How many of you have children who have braces or a retainer? How many of you have had braces or a retainer yourself? And how many of those retainers have been lost? Yes, it happens. It happened to me. It happened to pretty much all of my siblings. Those are expensive to replace. So Catherine did not want to call her mom and tell her this had happened again. But she did. She did the right thing. She called and told her mom, and Catherine's mom just said, "Okay, honey, I'm extremely frustrated with you right now, but go focus on your soccer tournament. I will call Chick-fil-A and see if they found the missing retainer." So Catherine's mom calls Chick-fil-A, and Dorothy answers the phone. "Thank you for calling Chick-fil-A. This is Dorothy. How can I help you?" Well, Catherine's mom explained the situation and asked if Dorothy wouldn't mind looking around for the retainer. Dorothy put Catherine's mom on hold and checked around the store, but no missing retainer. So Catherine's mom then says, "Well, Dorothy, would you mind setting aside the trash bags for me? I'd like to come down and look through the trash. I just can't afford to replace another retainer." And Dorothy says, "Well, my pleasure, ma'am." "Well, ma'am, actually, I can dig through the trash for you and call you if I find the missing retainer." Okay, how many of you would offer to dig through fast food trash for some girl's retainer? Okay, there's always like 3 people in the room. You're amazing, because I would not do that. I think it's absolutely revolting to dig through like ketchup and soda and yuck. But Dorothy offered. Catherine's mom said, "Oh no, dear, that's fine. I'll come down and do the dirty work. That's completely fine." So Catherine's mom comes down to Chick-fil-A. What does she find? But lo and behold, there is Dorothy up to her elbows in fast food trash. And she's smiling. Can you imagine being so happy to serve? She's digging through fast food trash and she's smiling. Now, they did find the missing retainer that day, but that's not the moral of the story by any means. Now, I often offer to do what I know is the extra mile thing to do, but I'm hoping and I'm praying that the person says, "Oh, no, dear, that's okay." Do you see what I mean? Do you know where I'm coming from? Okay. Because I want to look like the good person who offered to go the extra mile, but I don't want to actually have to do the dirty work. And this is just me being completely transparent and honest with you. That day, Dorothy offered to do the extra mile thing. She was let off the hook, but she chose to do it anyway. She chose to go the extra mile anyway. Now, she could have asked questions like, "Who put me on this shift? Why did I have to answer the phone when this lady called in? And of course, when are those teenagers going to keep their retainers in their mouths," right? But instead, I don't know Dorothy, but I can assume she asked questions like, "How can I contribute? How can I go the extra mile for this customer?" That's personal accountability. And I don't know how you've been picturing Dorothy this whole time, but she was 16. So this wasn't an adult in our society's terms who was going the extra mile and making this incredible contribution. She was a young person. And what that shows me, and hopefully shows you too, is that personal accountability can be practiced at all ages. And wouldn't it be great if all the youth began practicing this now so we weren't trying to teach them when they're 40 or 50? Personal accountability, it's just as simple as asking, what can I do to serve them and help them reach their goals? Hi, good morning. Well, do any of you know the Thornton area very well? Up by 104th? Well, we were driving down 104th Avenue back when I was in high school, and contrary to popular opinion, I was in high school a while ago. Okay? I just want to clear that up. So we're driving down 104th Avenue. I'm in high school. This is back when I'm still forced to sit in the back of the minivan with my entire family. Not exactly my favorite place to be when I'm 17 years old, but that's okay. So we're driving down the road, and off to our right, we see a large open field. And this large open field catches our attention that day because it's absolutely littered in newspapers. Now, you all know what the wind can be like in Colorado. So the winds were just kicking these newspapers into little mini tornadoes. So we thought this was a fairly interesting sight. Now, to top it off, on the edge of the field, we noticed something else. We noticed a man. And as we watched, this man tumbled from his wheelchair and started dragging himself by his elbows across the field, clutching papers to his chest as he went. Now, if the papers weren't already a great visual picture, this was intriguing. And I yelled from the back of the minivan, "Dad, we have to stop and help. There's so many of us, and there's only one of him." So Dad parked the van, and we got out, and we're literally picking newspapers out of the sky. It was quite an experience. And when we were done, we gathered around, and we just, of course, simply said, "What happened?" And as he got back into his wheelchair and caught his breath, he said, "Well, my name's Jerry." And then he went on to tell us his story. And it turns out Jerry had been in a car accident a few years back and had lost his ability to walk. But he could drive, and so he had a job as a newspaper delivery man. Well, he'd gotten home that day and noticed that he'd lost a bundle of papers out of the back of his pickup truck. Now, in what I think is an incredible act of accountability, he went back out to find those newspapers. So we're all circled around him, and my dad says to him, "Well, Jerry, I don't understand. What were you going to do? Were you going to pick them all up yourself?" And Jerry just kind of looks at my dad as if he's a little slow. And I can attest, and all of my siblings can attest to this fact. Woo! Things just go right over his head. And Jerry says, "Well, of course. I couldn't just leave them there. It's my mess. It's my mess." Is that a statement of accountability or what? It's my mess. My relationships aren't what I want them to be. It's my mess. My department is not as productive as it could be. It's my mess. My life is not turning out the way I hoped it would. It's my mess. Now, when I say it's my mess, I'm not saying any of us in here is a mess or has a mess, but we do have problems, right? I know I do. And saying it's my mess is just another way of saying I own it. I own my relationships. I own the results of my department. I own the path and the direction of my life. And if I don't like where I'm going, it's up to me to change it. So saying it's my mess is just another way of saying I own it, and that is personal accountability.